2 years ago, if you wanted to buy an EV, your choices were pretty limited. But today, you can buy one from Hyundai, Kia, Volvo, Polestar, BYD, Lexus, Porsche. The list goes on. They're everywhere. 10 years ago, BMW would sell you an EV, the BMW i3. It was a fantastic little city car that hardly anyone knows about, but definitely one of the coolest cars ever to go on sale. In 2022, we have this, the BMW i4. It's the third in a whole new wave of EVs from BMW. Before we get going on the BMW i4, can I ask you to hit subscribe and hit the bell button if you haven't already? That way, every time we put a new video here on the channel, you will hear about it straight away. Today we're going to talk about all the important stuff. What is this thing? How much does it cost? How far will it go on the battery? What does it cost to own? What's it like to drive? What's the inside like? We're going to go through all of that. And if you want to skip to the bit that you really want to know, we've chopped it up very nicely and cleanly down there in the YouTube chapter markers. Right, let's get going. This car makes me feel like I'm at a wedding. It's something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. The blue bit, well, that's pretty easy to explain because it's blue. Borrowed, well, I've borrowed it from BMW. But what do I mean by old and new? Well, it is a BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe. So it's at this point where I'm going to pause for a moment while people get into the comments and say something terrible about the looks. All right, you done? Excellent. Now I know this is going to get me cancelled, but I actually quite like the look of this car. I even don't mind the grille. It's old because it is built on BMW's CLAR platform. It's not a dedicated EV platform like the iX. So there's a few little compromises, but it's new because it is fully electric. There is no internal combustion engine in this car. It is just electrons, a whopping great battery pack, and in this one, 2 powerful electric motors. The i4 eDrive 40 starts at $99,900 before on roads and has a ton of gear to go with it. 19-inch wheels, leather interior, LED headlights, sporty seats, head-up display, adaptive suspension, auto parking, and lots more. This is the i4 M50, which BMW says is the first M-developed battery electric vehicle they've done. It's technically an M performance car, you can tell by the M50 rather than just a solitary M, and the purists will be happy that I've pointed that out. For $124,900, you get everything you get on the 40, plus a whole lot more. The extra cash buys you another motor and a lot more power, different M bits and pieces including carbon trim inside and out, Pirelli P0 tyres, the amazing laser light headlights, M technology package with better brakes, a sunroof, heated seats and a Harman Kardon sound system. Now before you ask, this car does cost quite a bit more than the equivalent Tesla Model 3 with similar performance. This is a powered tailgate, which is very handy, and it also works with the gesture kicky thing. You've got 470 litres of space in here, which is actually only 10 down on the petrol powered car, which is mighty impressive given all the gear they've had to cram into there. And under the floor, there is space in the base car for all your cables and stuff, but here in the M50, you've got a huge Harman Kardon subwoofer and a little bit of space here, which is taken up with the tyre repair kit. When you put the seats down, you have 1,290 litres, which is also quite a lot of space. Here in the back, it's what you'd call cozy. Now, that's for a couple of reasons. The first is that the Gran Coupe is cozy to start with. You're always going to have trouble with headroom in a car with a swoopy roof, but here in the i4, the seat is slightly higher to accommodate the batteries and whatever else is jammed in under here. You've got a very big transmission tunnel here, much like the Polestar. But the seat itself is good. There's a bit of shape to it, so it will hold you in cornering. Compare that to the Tesla Model 3, which is, yes, a much cheaper car, but that's just basically 2 wooden boards with upholstery on them. You are well looked after though. You've got your own climate zone, you've got your own air vents, you've also got 2 USB-C ports, which is very handy for charging, of course. You've got cup holders here in the armrest. Very nice, and they take this big boy, which is now refusing to come out. The bottle holders, less successful. You're going to only get, you might struggle to get a half litre bottle in there, but I think you might do it. but it is quite comfortable. I am 180 centimeters tall. I'm sitting behind where I sit in the driver's seat. There's enough knee room, and I'm glad about that because this does have a hard shell on the back. Not all of them do. Well, it's not hard, but it's not soft either. I can get my feet underneath, but the seats do sit very low, so it's a tight fit. But for short trips, this is fine. Longer trips, you're going to get a bit tired because under here isn't very well supported because your feet are a little higher. And I do think the floor is probably slightly higher than the standard car, so your knees are up. But this is the Gran Coupe. It's always going to be a compromise in the back, and it's a double compromise because this is not a dedicated EV platform. From the second I got into this cockpit, I was a fan. For a start, it's got a proper round steering wheel. Even BMW can't help themselves on some of the cars, like the iX, which is the big new SUV. It's got a really wacky looking steering wheel, and a lot of manufacturers for some reason think that this 1 or 2 spoke steering wheel, depending on who you talk to, is the steering wheel to have. But this is a proper M wheel. You put your hands on it and you can turn it. It's great. I really like it. It's pretty much the Gran Coupe's interior, which is great because that is an excellent interior. It's not flashy, it's not amazing to look at, but it is really well built and it's really usable. These stalks have been around for years and they're fantastic and everything just works. Now what is different from the Gran Coupe is this. This is this huge curved, well, it looks like one screen, it's 2 screens. There's a huge curved screen here. On the left here is the media and sat-nav and iDrive screen. That's running BMW OS 8. So the iX3, which I tested a couple of weeks ago, is running OS 7 and immediately can see the difference, and it is a lot better, even though I didn't have anything specifically to complain about in OS 7, apart from the flaky wireless Apple CarPlay. And then there's a 12.3-inch dash in front of you, which is an evolution of the BMW Live Cockpit. Tons of information, it looks great, and it's really, really nice to look at and easy to see. Plus you got a heads-up display, so there's plenty of tech going on. OS 8 has wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, which is really cool, and it also powers things like BMW Digital Key, which means you can use your phone to get in and out of the car, or an NFC card, so that's really nifty. These seats are fantastic. I'm not entirely clear from the documentation we got from BMW whether these seats are optional or not, but whatever they are, they're very comfortable. The ones in the 40 are also very comfortable. They're just a bit less racy looking. And of course, here in the upper electric versions, you've got blue accents everywhere to remind you that you are in an electric car. Blue's been the eye color from day dot. It's kind of cool. Also in the M50, you get this carbon weave throughout the cabin, which actually looks quite nice rather than what it does in a lot of cars, which is crap. You've got storage under here. There's a wireless charging pad under here, which is always really handy when you've got wireless Apple CarPlay. 2 cup holders. See if they'll fit my big boy. They certainly do. That's nice. And a 12 volt and a USB-A. This is the iDrive controller. So this is both a touchscreen and iDrive controller. So your BMW owners who've been using iDrive for a while will welcome this with all its shortcut buttons. Normal shifter, nothing amazing about that. There's also a tray here with a USB-C port. So you're well looked after. Again, the bottle holders. Oh. It fits this time. So it does take a bottle. So that's better. This big bottle does fit in this front bottle holder, although it's a bit of a palaver to get it back out. Plenty of headroom, very, very comfortable, lots of adjustment in the seats, and the sunroof doesn't destroy headroom in the front because there is tons more headroom in the front than there is in the back. But it's a great cabin, but really, it's really set off by this massive screen. The i4 comes with 6 airbags, the usual traction and stability controls, forward and rear cross traffic alert, forward AEB, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, blind spot monitoring, and a whole bunch of sensors and cameras to do a whole bunch of other stuff. If you want to learn more about the safety, you can read my written review on the website, link in the description. The i4 has not been crashed by ANCAP or Euro NCAP, but the car on which it is based did get a 5-star ANCAP rating in 2019. The i440 has a single motor rear-wheel drive setup with 250 kilowatts and 430 Newton meters. It'll go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 5.7 seconds, and because it uses less power, has a longer range of 520 kilometers. This is the i4 M50. It is a lot more money, but you do get a lot more power and you get a whole extra motor into the bargain. So here at the front, you have a motor that will do 190 kilowatts and at the rear, 230 kilowatts. I know that doesn't add up to 400 kilowatts like the spec sheet says, but that's physics and stuff. You also get 795 Newton meters of torque, which is an absolute slab of torque. That's a lot of twist. That means you can get from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.9 seconds. And I tell you what, it feels faster. It really does get up and go. BMW uses what's called current excited synchronous motors, which means they don't have any magnets in them. And that means that there's no rare earth metals, unlike the battery, which is full of them. It's, yeah, it's finally a car to take on that Tesla really fast acceleration vibe. Packed in underneath the i4 is an 84 kilowatt hour lithium ion nickel rich battery pack. Now, BMW is very keen for you to know it's nickel rich. I'm not sure why. It has an 81 kilowatt hour of usable capacity, which gives you a range of 520 kilometers in the i440, and here in the M50 with its extra motor and extra power draw, about 465 kilometers. Now I've been driving this not softly, and I'm gonna get around 430 Ks out of a charge when you even it all out. That's pretty good. Now, charging, glad you asked. The AC port. The car comes with a cable that will charge at 1.8 kilowatts. So that's pretty slow, and it's gonna take you 2 days to charge it off a domestic pin. So clearly that is for emergencies only or for a bit of a trickle. If you get a wall box, that will give you 7 kilowatts. That's gonna be pretty good for most people because you can just charge it overnight. And if you charge during off-peak, it will cost you about $1 an hour and you're gonna get 7 kilowatts for that, which is about 10–12% of the usable capacity. If you've got 3-phase power, you'll step up again to 11 kilowatts. So you can pretty much charge the battery in around about 8 hours. So that's pretty good. Now, DC charging maxes out at 200 kilowatts. BMW says you can charge from 10 to 80% in just 31 minutes. That's pretty quick. There's a problem though. Every time I go to a charging station, it's either broken or it doesn't give me the full charge. So when I found one that worked, it was a 165 kilowatt station. It took about 15 minutes to give me 22% of charge. That's not bad. That's about 105, 110 Ks, but you can't find the working chargers. This car does come with a 5-year ChargeFox subscription, which is really cool. So does the iX3 and so does the iX. But every ChargeFox station I go to, there's a problem. So you might have to think about that. The other problem with ChargeFox, of course, is it's still a growing network. Where I live in Sydney, near Botany Bay, there is a gigantic gap in the coverage. So you really have to think about whether or not that's going to be useful to you. As I said before, it is the 22nd year of the 21st century and BMW is still sticking with a 3-year warranty, like a monarchist politician sticking to a visiting junior royal. It is time to move on to 5 years, like everybody else. The battery is covered by an 8-year, 160,000 kilometre warranty, which is about the same as everybody else in the battery electric game, so at least that is covered. If you want to prepay your servicing, you can do 4 years for $1,240 or 6 years for $1,765. Now, I know all the Tesla people are going to scream about having to service it all, let alone having to pay for it, but cars have lots of moving parts in them, so I'm a big fan of having them checked out. On that point, it's a BMW, so service is condition-based, but you'll pretty much be in the dealer once a year. Making an electric car is a challenging thing. Even BMW, which has been making cars for however long, doing it electric, there's a whole bunch of new challenges. You've got to make sure it's quiet, you've got to make sure it handles, because all the weights have moved around and all the engineering to make an electric car go is quite different to the way you make a petrol car go. And when I say go, I mean the way it handles and stops and turns. The second I got in this car, the way it just pulled away and the ride was composed and it was happy, I thought this car is already pretty good. Like, if you were just looking for an electric car, this is a great electric car because it's got a really nice BMW feel to it. And that's what most BMW buyers are looking for. They want that steering and handling vibe that you know you're driving a car that is going to be stuck to the road and is going to look after you in the corners. But as the speed builds, and you can build speed in this car extraordinarily quickly, again, you're feeling that BMW engineering working really well under a very different set of circumstances that a petrol engine car does. And what's really amazing is the way this car rides. I've often found electric cars to have a really awkward, knotty ride. It's just difficult to get the wheel movements right because of the change in the weight and the drop in the center of gravity. Car companies seem to have struggled to get that right, but this is really good. It does feel like an ordinary BMW, but you do feel the weight. It's 2,300 kilos. The 40 is still pretty heavy at about 21-30 kilos. That's a lot of extra weight to be carrying around in a body shell that really only is engineered, well, it's not engineered, but it's normally carrying quite a lot less. You've got half a ton of batteries in this car. You've got very heavy electric motors front and rear. It's a really big change to the way cars are made. And this is terrific. And the same is true for the iX3, which also is a standard petrol or diesel car, but with electric motors put in it. It feels great. So BMW clearly have cracked the code. And then when you go to the next level, where you start to push the car, yes, you still feel the weight. You still know that this is quite a lot heavier than a BMW M car or any corresponding M performance car. But it really masks the weight really, really well. It's really impressive. The adaptive damping is just right. No, the ride is not soft and plush like you might expect from a 7 Series, but no Gran Coupe has that. The electric engines are out of this world. They're so good. There aren't many cars outside of Tesla or the really expensive stuff like the Porsche Taycan that push a car along the way these do. But they also contribute to the handling, which I think is really important because, again, when you've got 2 electric motors, one at the front, one at the rear, it's not like an all-wheel drive M3 or whatever, where there's a physical link between the two and the power can be shuffled backwards and forwards. There are limitations on the way that power can be used and the way that power can be balanced, and it's really, really well done. You don't get crippling understeer like I was expecting in other electric cars and got, whereas this car, it really does feel like a well stuck down all-wheel drive car. And while the rear-wheel drive one is probably going to be slightly more fun day to day, this is something else. It really is great fun. I actually had a bloke pull up next to me in traffic the other day and ask whether he should get this or the M3. And before I got it, my gut feel was, oh, just get the M3. But having driven it, it's a more difficult decision to make. You've really got to think about what you want out of a car, what you want to get out of the M3 versus what you get in the i4, and you'd actually have to think about it. In the end, this car's cheaper than an M3. You'll have probably read about this on the internet, but BMW got Hans Zimmer, he of the Hollywood movie score composing fame, to create a soundscape for the car. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear it, but it's really cool. And what it does in a sort of sensory way is it connects you to what the car's doing, which is what a lot of people complain about in electric cars. You can't hear the engines, you can't feel the gearbox changes, you can't feel any of that. Whereas this soundscape, which is very orchestral and very grand, it connects you to what the car's doing, and that's really cool. So when you're accelerating, it rises and it gives you that kind of exciting orchestral feel. And then when you get off the throttle, it's like a musical overrun, which is really clever. Part of the M Performance or the M Technology pack is a bigger set of brakes. And again, with the weight, you need them, but they're really good. They're not grabby. They take a little bit of getting used to at slow speed, but once you're up and running, it really is. They are fantastic brakes, and they're really confidence inspiring given what you've got to pull up when you do get on the brakes. What's also impressive is the one pedal driving. BMW have always done a great job with one pedal driving. So when you put this car in drive and then knock it over into B mode, you've got adaptive one pedal driving. So it knows if there's a hill in front of you or a corner and will actually adjust the level of regen based on that. So where before in BMWs you didn't always have the ability to coast along without one pedal driving. You can now choose that. That's kind of nice, but I always have it in one pedal driving. I just think that's a great way to drive the car, and you get much better battery regeneration, and therefore you're going to get more range. And on the range point, I have not been babying this car, but after a set of very complicated calculations, which included charging it, I reckon I'm getting about 420, 430 kilometres out of a full charge of this car, which is only about 10% off the figure that BMW quotes, which is 465 kilometres. That's pretty good. I mean, the petrol cars, I reckon you're doing well if you get within 30% of the ADR figure, but I'm within 10% of this, and there are some electric cars that are way off the range. So that's really impressive, and that also bodes well for the single motor car, which has the same battery, but is drawing less power. I reckon that 520 Ks, which is pretty good for any electric car, is gettable. And that again is confidence inspiring, because you can go to a charge station, find it's not working, and if you've got a little bit extra, you're going to get to that next charging station. So while range anxiety is still going to be a thing for some people in this car, it's dependable, the battery's more than big enough, and it can still deliver that performance that this car has, which is, oh boy, sub 4 seconds in anything is a lot of fun. I came into this car with lowish expectations. I just wasn't sure that on a normal ICE platform, BMW could sprinkle that M magic with all of that extra weight and all of that extra stuff that you have to put in for an electric car. I was wrong. This is a properly fun, fast car, and it really does live up to that M performance type spec, where you've got the normal car, a full-on M car, and that middle M performance. Yes, it's heavy. It's 2.3 tonnes of car. It's got half a tonne of batteries in it, but those batteries have lowered the centre of gravity to help take away some of the pain of putting all that extra weight in it. It's not cheap, but it's not super expensive either for what you're getting, and it is an absolute rocket. This really is a brilliant, fun, almost family EV. But what I'm really pleased about is that it's bringing sexy back to the sedan. It's a spaceship, Buzz! A spaceship! The i4 comes with 6 airbags, the usual jerkbirds. That's a lot of fun, and when we do stop hesitating.